Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm so happy that you're joining me today. I'm going to be playing with a few more of Spellbinders' July Club kits. These are all Christmas in July themed, and I'm going to be doing some really fun techniques with these club kits today. So, as you can see, I'm starting out with the Better Press Club. This one's called Christmas Haul. This one is such a fun one to play with. In this club, you get some Better Press plates as well as some cutting dies. And I'm going to start out with the registration template. I'll tape that down to my Better Press machine, and then I'll start with the truck. And I put it on upside down, and I realize that here in just a sec. And then I flip it over. There we go. So the registration templates are really nice because it allows you to use different colors on your plates. So my truck today is going to be blue. And I'm using some very pale gray cotton cardstock for this. This one is called Pebble. Pick up the cardstock with the door or the lid of my Better Press system. Now I can ink up the truck. I'm using some of this pretty blue coastal ink. And I go over it several times because I want to have a nice dark image pressed into the paper. When I press and twist the ink pad, I do get the plate a little out of alignment, but I just kind of push that back into place with my all-in-one tool. Now I can put the lid back on, and I'm going to run this through my die cutting machine. I'll pull that over onto my desk. And then I like to run it through really slow to give the ink a chance to absorb into the paper. And I'll go back the way I came. And then let's see how the first pressing has turned out. And it looks really cute, but I want the ink to be darker. So the great thing about these templates is that you can re-ink it. And it's going to press the ink right back into the same place. The second pressing turns out just perfect. It's nice and dark. And it's so fun because you can do multiple colors of trucks. I wanted to try a dusty blue truck today. Okay, now for the tires. So I'm going to use my magnet tool to pick up the plate. And then here are the tires. I, of course, use black ink for those. And here is my sentiment. I used the same blue coastal ink and some leaf green for the tree. I cut out my truck panel with a postage edge rectangle die, and I want this to be kind of a cool, wintry scene. So I'm using some gray ink around the edges. And then I'm going to attach this to a piece of pomegranate red cardstock. It's such a rich, pretty red paper. So the gray ink that I put around the edges of my panel is going to make the white snow stand out a little bit more. I popped up the sentiment with some foam squares. And now for the snow. You can die cut some snow with some of the dies included in this kit. I'll put one along the back of the truck. And I put some under the tires as well. And I'm going to put one at the top of the truck. But I'll glue the Christmas tree down flat. And I'll attach this to a top folding white card base. I love the red truck on the packaging. I think that is so fun, especially for Christmas. But I wanted to bump it up a little bit more. It needed something else. It just looks too plain as is. So I'm pulling in the stencil of the month for July, and it's called Sprigs and Bow. And I'm going to ink up and then cut out the bow. To cut this out so that it fits my panel, I'm going to use the same postage edge die. I'll run this through my die cutting machine. Just put enough tape on there to hold it steady. Again, I'm going to pull my machine back onto my work mat. I don't usually show my machine and die cut on camera, but the space where I keep my die cutting machine is so filled up with stuff. And this is the only way I could die cut it. I need to clean my little craft room. But here is the cute bow, and I stamped it out with a leaf green ink as well to match the tree. But I don't want it to cover the truck. It does look cute, however, that way. But I am going to snip out the middle section of this bow. So I'm using a pencil. I'm sorry my head gets in the way here. And I'm just going to mark where I need to snip this. And then I can glue this in place. And because I used the same postage edge die cut, it just pops back into place perfectly. And then the bow will continue at the bottom right of this panel, but I do need to clip that out. And then I can just glue this in place. And it just makes all the difference for this card. I don't think that this design would be one that I would mass produce for Christmas, but it is going to be fun to create a couple of these cards for sending out this year. And here is a close-up look. I did add some red gems on the tree for decoration and for a touch of sparkle on the card. So for my next technique, I'm going to be using the 3D embossing folder for July called Pine Cones and Berries. So I have a piece of fern green cardstock, and before I run it through my machine, I am going to wet it down with a baby wipe. I'll do that to both sides. This just prevents cracking. And then I can pop it in the folder and run it through my machine using the appropriate sandwich, of course. And I really love the 3D embossing folders. Spellbinders does have a club with just regular embossing folders, but since I've been working with the 3D folders, I just can't go back to the regular folders. And here is my panel. Isn't that beautiful? Just as it is. You wouldn't really even have to do anything else to this card if you don't want. But I am going to start out with some white pigment ink. This is from Hero Arts. I love their white pigment ink. It's so thick and pretty. I'm going to add some snow to the pine boughs on this panel. I'm just using a small stencil brush to do this. And then I'll use some red Distress Oxide ink to go over all of the berries. I love using the Distress Oxide inks on colored cardstock. And it looks like a hot mess right now. It looks really bad. But trust me, it's going to look pretty in just a minute. I brought in some brown ink, or some more of the Distress Oxide to go over the pine cones. And now this is where it's going to turn really pretty. So now I'm bringing in a blending brush. I'm going to go over the whole panel with the white pigment ink. I put it on kind of thick to begin with, but I'm going to thin it out. I'll bring the ink to my little piece of plastic paper there, just to kind of wipe it off before I bring it to the panel from now on. And I'm just gently going over the whole panel. You'll still be able to see the red berries as well as the brown pine cones, but everything's just going to be softened. This is kind of similar to a watercolor technique called glazing. But this time I'm glazing with pigment ink. And you can add as much or as little ink as you'd like. Let me give you a close-up look. And you can still see all of the other colors I used. However, I do wish I used more brown on the pine cones. I didn't go very dark there. So I cut my panel in half so that I could create 2 cards with this. I'm using a scallop die to add a little more of the red cardstock. And let's see, this comes from the Winter Borders etched die set. And then I'll glue everything down onto my white card base. I'm also using some green glitter cardstock. The glitter cardstock's kind of new to the Spellbinders shop, and it's so beautiful. And then I can open up this card. and cut off the overhang. The sentiments come from the Christmas Magic Sentiments, which is the clear stamp and die of the month for July. And I use the coordinating dies to cut out Merry Christmas. I cut out red cardstock with the dies as well, just to add a small border underneath. I'll glue these down flat. And here is a close-up of card number 2. Those berries just look so pretty and frosted. And then let me show you card number 3. I did the same thing, except for it has a different sentiment. This one says, Christmas joy from our home to yours. And I love that these cards are nice and flat, so they're going to be very easy to mail out. These 3D embossing folders are great because they give you some dimension and a lot of interest to your cards. Now let's move on to the Glimmer of the Month Club. This one's called Joyful Holly. This one is so stunning. I'm glimmering the joy sentiment first, and I'm using some very pale gold foil for this. I think it's called Aura. And the paper I'm glimmering it onto is a beautiful yellowy gold paper called Tuscan. I don't often use it, but it's great for Christmas because it has that lovely gold quality to it. So let's peel off the foil, and I'll show you how this looks. The Aura foil looks on the Tuscan cardstock. I think it's so bright and pretty. Now let's glimmer up the holly and berries. I'm going to use the same Aura foil. Just need to cut out a piece that will cover my plate. I'm putting, of course, the pretty side of the paper to the pretty side of the plate. I'm using the Tuscan cardstock again. And then, of course, I'll press the timer. And I'm going to jump ahead to the unveiling. So this one turned out beautifully as well. I'm going to use the coordinating dies to cut everything out. The other part of the sentiment is last. And this just says, wishing you. And I did foil that with some red foil. So colored cardstock is really fun to use your colored pencils on. So I'm using some colored pencils to color in the berries as well as the holly. I'm allowing some of the yellowy gold cardstock to show through. I'm not going to completely cover that up with the red pencil. And these pencils are Caran d'Ache Luminance pencils, but you can use whatever pencils you have in your stash. And I'm going to use a green colored pencil to add just a hint of color to the base of each leaf. And it's a very subtle look, but it's so pretty. I used a hem stitch die to cut out a green fern panel, and I'm going to attach that to another top folding white card base. And I like how the white of the cardstock shows through because it's going to pull in my white sentiment that says wishing you. And let's start up at the top with the sentiment. I have to make sure I have room for the sentiment first, because the holly and berries you can overlap or tuck under. The sentiment has to be just right and legible. And now for the joy. I love that this set comes with the coordinating dies. And last, I'm going to glue down the holly flat with more liquid glue. I'm using a piece of the yellow tape to hold my card down for me. It just kept wanting to pop up. I did add a few gold sequins, and here is a close-up look. The glimmer plates are especially fun to use on your Christmas cards because it just provides a wow factor and you get that gorgeous glimmer. Card number 5 is going to be very similar to card number 4. I foiled it again with some Tuscan cardstock. This time I'm going to use a coordinating stencil to color it in. If you purchase the Kit and Caboodle Club, which is every single club kit each month, then you get a few extra goodies like this stencil that you can't buy anywhere else. So I'm going to use some cracked pistachio Distress Oxide ink. And again, I'm just putting a little bit of color at the base of each petal. I wasn't sure how the cracked pistachio green would look. Let me show you how it turns out. It is just stunning. It went really well with the Tuscan cardstock. I'll wipe off the stencil and then I can peel it off and show you how this looks. Oops, I didn't give you much of a chance to look at it, but I will give you a close-up in just a minute. But I'm continuing on with the berries with more red Distress Oxide ink. This provides you with a very fast way to color in your images. I'm going over the berries pretty thickly with this ink because I want it to match really well with the red cardstock that I'm using. Now let's wipe off the stencil with a microfiber cloth. And then here is the completed image all ready to go. I'm going to carefully bend my sticky mat and peel it off. So I glued my panels together as well as my sentiments, and now I just have my last piece to add to this card. And again, I'm gluing everything down flat. I tuck one of the leaves under the joy sentiment so that it will fit. And I added a few red sequins to this card. And here is a close-up look. Spellbinders has some really fun clubs this month. They're helping me get all of my Christmas cards done ahead of time so that I can just sit back and enjoy the Christmas season. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope that you were inspired, and I hope that you make the time to sit down and create some fun cards of your own. Take care. Bye.